Welcome, sentient beings from all known universes and beyond. It's time to activate your cranial downlinks and prepare to receive a raft of discussion on a cosmic ocean of science fiction and fantasy topics, interviews with local area genre devotees, and insightful prognostication by our soothsayers of science fiction, our forecasters of fantasy, and any other beings that happen to get caught in our gravity well. This is the Galactic Driftwood Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Galactic Driftwood Podcast. I'm Bill.
I'm Linda.
I'm Charles.
And I'm Chris.
And we have a friend of the show back on with us today, Stu Burns, who's our paranormal folklore expert, vampire folklore. How would you describe yourself, Stu? I'll let you...
Well, all my training was in history.
Okay.
But the further on I've got, the more I find myself identified as a folklorist. So I kind of roll with that. My specialty is vampires, but like everything else, that kind of bleeds into everything.
Lots of other stuff. All right. So we thought we'd get Stu on this show to talk about some of the paranormal stories in this region, perhaps Nebraska, maybe a little bit of Iowa. And just see what kind of paranormal things are going on, since we are, after all, in the month of October. So, Stu, I'll let you roll with it. Where do you think we should start here? What?
Oh, that's a darn good question.
Yeah,
there's a lot going on there, depending on what your appetites are. I went on a tour. I haven't really been on a ghost tour of Omaha, believe it or not, and I'm certainly not prepared to conduct them. I went on a ghost tour of Lincoln a few years ago, and people have always asked me, Stu, have you ever been really freaked out by one of these things? And that was the only time I've ever been really freaked out, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
The first stop on the tour was the penitentiary cemetery, where there are a lot of unmarked graves, and obviously people who have died in very horrific circumstances.
Sure. And
so they say, yes, this is obviously haunted, and spirits and things are seen here at night. And that's too bad. It's one of those sad. I mean, I think the best ghost stories always have that twinge of sadness there. There's a melancholy happening. But so then, as we drive away from the penitentiary, that the bus takes this left turn into this residential area, and I'm like, boy, this is where I lived when I was a little boy. My dad, lived here out of college, and we moved away from here when I was 4. And then as the bus proceeded through the residential neighborhood, the fellow kept talking about ghost stories and this and that in general. And we turned on to a street that I recognized as my street that I lived on when I was a little boy. I'm like, well, this is interesting. We're going to go through this area. And then he pulls up to a house that I recognized as my house from when I was 4 years old. And
oh, you're kidding me.
Decides to stop in front of my house that I lived in when I was 4 years old. And so I was to tell a ghost story. And I was like, well, this is interesting.
Yes.
And he wouldn't identify the house. That was the funny part. He didn't say which house it was. He said, there's a house around here. I won't point it out because we don't have the owner's permission. I'm like, but we're sitting right in front of my house on Tipperary Trail in Lincoln, Nebraska, which is not a Gothic neighborhood at all. It was, these were houses that were built right around the time I was born.
Was this a story you were familiar with, or
not at all? And in fact, the story itself was frankly boring. It was one of those doors open and close and it's just something that someone had told him that he found scary. But yes, if you want to talk about something eerie, I was not expecting to be sat down in front of my old house.
That's funny. Interesting. Well, now I found one thing of interest is that the state capitol here in Nebraska is haunted. Now, what do you know about that?
Well, I think ghosts tend to, at least in our popular imagination. I'll admit in my heart of hearts, I'm a skeptic. I can play a believer on TV if I need to, I suppose. But ghosts, according to people who are aficionados, tend to attach themselves to places that have a great meaning to them. And so you have a place like the Capitol where there have obviously been things that affect a lot of people's lives, and it's natural for spirits or for personages to attach themselves to a place like that, or to be imagined to. Honestly, sure. I think those things tend to go hand in hand, really. You see, okay. That's the old Senate chamber you're showing there, I believe. I don't think that's the current Unicam chamber. I could be wrong. No, that's the current. That's the current. That's right. The best ghost story that I know of is there were some people working on the dome at the top of the Capitol.
Right.
And I think they were actually prisoners, and one of them fell to his death.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing here. It said locals will often talk about the Christmas lights that once hung from the tower of the state capitol, and how the city would charge the dangerous task of hanging them to prisoners, looking to shorten their sentences. And reportedly, one such prisoner panicked while stringing the lights, suffered a heart attack, and eventually fell to his death. And some people at the Capitol, when they're there, say that they can still occasionally hear him sobbing and screaming in the area.
Oh, I believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, of course, the naturalist in me says, if you've ever been to the Capitol, the acoustics in there are such that you'll hear the darndest things.
Right.
Sound tends to bounce around in there. What was I going to say? Yeah, they did some interesting things with prisoners back in those days, by the way. As we're now, the pandemic that we're hopefully emerging from now has brought the flu of 1919 to a lot of people's minds.
Sure.
And at one point, they had a program where they wanted to study the progress of the flu. And so they had some prisoners. They said, hey, the same deal. You'll shorten your sentence if you go into a flu ward, let these people cough on you.
Oh, God.
And give you the flu and we'll observe you.
Oh, geez.
Here's where the weirdness of the 1919 flu comes in. Of all these volunteer prisoners, of which there were many, not one of them managed to contract the flu.
Wow.
That viruses are weird. I don't care who you are. I don't care which viruses are flat out weird. They're just the darndest.
Maybe none of the viruses wanted to go to prison.
Yeah, that's it.
You get some rough stuff in prison there, I tell you.
Yeah, you do. You do. Well, now, I'm guessing, if I had to guess, I would guess that you have been to the Villisca Axe Murder House, which is located in Iowa, not too far from Omaha here, Villisca, Iowa.
Couple of times. Now, have you ever experienced anything strange there? And maybe you could tell us a little bit of the story of Villisca if you happen to know it. Otherwise, sure. You will. Yeah, I mean, not to tell tales out of school, but Bill probably knows the story better than I do. But and my experience of the place is a little different, because the first time I went there was in '94, when Darwin Lynn had run a museum in Villisca for years, just a general, here's the old stuff type of museum, nothing macabre related to the axe murder at all. And he didn't have that sign out in front of it when he reopened it, but he bought the house with the intention of doing what ended up being done with it. And it was covered by these green slate shingles. And he figured, well, I'm going to have to redo everything here. He pulled off the green slate, and exactly, Linda, what you were just showing, the white siding was right there underneath. Hadn't been touched. Somebody wanted to cover up that house and make it look different.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that siding you're seeing is pure. That's 1912 siding. That there's been some maintenance done to it, but that's 1912 siding. But when we went out there in '94 for the first time, he really, it's interesting how this develops in people's imaginations and how people construct their reality. He really wasn't talking about ghosts at all. He was talking about really much more of a true crime oriented attraction there. And he took us through the house and gave us all the details. But then by the time I went back in 2014, they were in full ghost story swing at that point. This is the weirdest thing I've had happen happened there was we were going on a tour, and I've heard for so many years how a parent's love for their child just cannot be expressed. It's just the deepest desire to protect and to nurture that one can imagine. And we had a family group going in before us, and the mom got so scared she grabbed her 11-year-old child and threw the child in front of her.
Oh.
God.
Yikes.
So that apparently there are limits to this love that a parent can have for their child.
Right.
She was ready to throw it to the supernatural right then and there. But to give details, and I'm going to mess up the details because I'm not reading them off. But Josiah Moore worked for a local merchant named F.F. Jones. Big man in the community, a state senator, the whole bit. And for years, he was his assistant, helped run his agricultural implement store. And then the John Deere company came to F.F. Jones and said, "We'd like you to start selling John Deere." And Jones says, "Don't want to do it. I'm good where I'm at." Here's Josiah Moore said, "I'd love to. That sounds great." And so he got his own dealership and caused a little bit of bad blood between he and Jones. And a couple of years later, there was a church program in town, and a couple of kids who lived, a little ways out of town were staying, came in for the church program, and the Moores said, "Well, they can just stay at our house tonight, and then in the morning you can come pick them up." or we'll run back out. We'll run back out to your house.
Yeah.
So they, went to the church. Yeah, I sound like Alice's Restaurant when I say this. Went to the church, and came home, had a dinner that couldn't be beat, and went to sleep and didn't get up until the next morning. But then, unfortunately, didn't get up the next morning. The neighbors in the morning look out their window and say, "The animals haven't been fed. All the chores aren't done. We haven't seen these people yet. What's going on?" And so they rang Josiah Moore's brother and said, "There might be something wrong at the house. We haven't seen anybody all day, and the animals haven't been fed." So he goes up, unlocks the house, and comes in and finds that Josiah Moore, his wife, their 4 sons, and the 2 little girls who were staying with them had all been murdered.
With an axe.
With an axe. Moore had been, and I wonder now if, well, I'll draw a cause and effect later, but Moore had been killed, with the sharp end of the axe into the skull, but the other 7 had been bludgeoned with the blunt end. A couple things about it. I'll tell this is by far the saddest part of the story for me. Was the little girl's mother is also waiting, like, where is the, those are the old slate shingles.
Huh.
The Linda's pulled up. That was what's on the house before Mr. Lynn bought it. The mom of these 2 girls are waiting. She is waiting for the Moors to bring them back out, and she's waiting and they don't come. And so finally she calls the operator and says, "Ring the house." And the operator, because that's all calls in those days were operator assisted calls. You couldn't call directly. You call the operator and they took you up. Mm-hmm. And the operator said, "Oh, I can't ring that house. They've all been killed."
Oh.
That's how the mother heard that her daughters.
Yikes.
Oh, that'd be a terrible way to find out.
Horrible. Absolutely. I can't imagine anything worse.
Now I was looking at the you can find online, there's a website called iowacoldcases.org where you can go get all the details of this, and it says the killer added 2 bizarre touches to the murder scene. The first was a 4-pound piece of slab bacon leaning against the wall next to the axe.
What?
Yeah. The murderer also had searched dresser drawers for pieces of clothing to cover the mirrors in the house and the glass in the entry doors. On the kitchen table was a plate of uneaten food and a bowl of bloody water.
Oh.
All the victims were found in their beds, their heads covered with bed cloths, and all had their skulls battered 20 to 30 times each with the blunt end of the axe.
Yikes.
The ceiling in the parents' bedroom and the children's room upstairs showed gouge marks, apparently made by the upswing of the axe. Let's see. Stella Stillinger's nightgown had been pushed up and she'd been left exposed. Doctors concluded she had not been sexually abused. She also had a blood stain on her knee and an alleged defensive wound on her arm. So she must have probably woken up during the attack. So yeah, that was, and all this happened June 12th, 1912. So I think I was actually spent the night there because now you can pay to spend the night there, right? And it comes out to like $66.60 per person. Try to get that 666 in there, I think. Right?
Nice.
Yeah, and then you can spend the night in the Villisca Axe Murder House. So I think I was there in 2012 because it was the 100th anniversary of the murders. The murders happened on June 12th. I was actually there. It was the weekend right after Halloween. So first weekend of November. And it was a little chilly that night, and they've got there's really no heat or air conditioning in the house. They do have like a window unit. There's stairs that go up to the second floor. There's a landing midway with a window there, and they've put in a little unit there that can either put out heat or air conditioning. And there's a cord that's attached to it that runs out to a shed where they actually have electrical power because there's no electricity in the house. So when you're in the house, it's, as long as you've got daylight outside, you've got light. But once the sun sets, unless you have lanterns or something, you don't see any, you're just in pitch blackness, which, adds to the creepiness of it. They've also changed the furniture there in the house so that the furniture more closely resembles the type of furniture that you would have seen in the 1800s when the house was actually occupied, including the kitchen and stuff, and the beds and the bedrooms, dressers, and all that kind of stuff. So, the 1800s furniture coupled with the fact that there's no electricity and the necessary use of lanterns to walk around at night all lends to the creepy air of the place when you're there spending the night. And then of course they give you the full details of the story and the murder that happened and where each person was laying and how they were found and where they believe the murderer was hiding out in the house. Yeah, so there's the kitchen of the house. And of course, it's all wood floors. And, they talk about, they've got some toys in there that you can try to use, because supposedly if you use the toys in there, the children that were murdered might come out and play with them or whatever. And so they've got some balls in there that you can roll across the floor. And then they say, the balls just won't roll straight. Well, of course they won't roll straight because the house was built in the early 1800s. It's wood, it's settled, and the wood floor is not level. So you push the ball, it's naturally going to go all over the place, which it does. But it was an interesting night. I was there with, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 other people besides myself. And one of the guys, like myself, is more of the atheist persuasion. So he actually called and invited me to go because his neighbor, who is very religious and buys into the ghost stuff 100%, has gone before and had all kinds of strange things happen. Yeah. So this is one of the kids' bedrooms upstairs. And that door that you see on the right in the picture that Linda's posting here is a closet where supposedly if you can sit there and you talk to the kids, that they'll open and close that closet door. But if you open that closet door and examine inside, you'll see that most of the plaster has come off of the wall backing, and there's cobwebs up there that just kind of flutter in the breeze as the air just kind of flows in and out of the room as the temperature changes throughout the day. And of course, that air can easily move that door. But true believers will see it as being ghosts moving the door, I guess. But anyway, so he invited me to go along with him because he didn't want to be the only non-believer there. So I said, I told him I would go on one condition. I wanted to try every horror trope that you see in the movies that supposedly unleashes demons, right? So we did the whole, bite the apple in the mirror and say Beelzebub 3 times. And we had a Ouija board there and yeah, everything. And when I brought in the Ouija board, the woman that got us, unlocked the house for us and got us in for the night, she's like, "Oh, I definitely wouldn't do that. No, that's a bad idea." But we set up the Ouija board anyway. Set it up in the main living room of the room, and then I had a video camera, and I set the video camera on top, looking direct down at the Ouija board. We put the planchette on there right in the middle, and we offered the ghosts a chance to move it for us, and we asked a question: if there are any other souls in this room besides those of us, that were standing there, please give us a sign. And we ended up leaving, going away for an hour. We went out to the shed that has electricity because they had place out there where you could cook food, and we brought some coolers with food and pop. And so we went out there and sat for, I don't know, 30-40 minutes or whatever, and then came back in to check the planchette, and it hadn't moved so much as a millimeter. So that didn't seem to work very well. And then my atheist friend and I, we sat down at the board and put our hands on it and asked for some sort of guidance, and nothing happened either. So the true believers that were there were convinced that it was because of our negative energies that the ghosts were not manifesting that night. We ruined it for them.
Please tell me there's video.
Yeah. I don't think I saved the video of the monitoring of the Ouija board, unfortunately. But I will tell you this, and this is the only, I would say, the only disturbing thing that happened that night. So I've got this table. It's a one of those tables, it's like a little fold-up table you can buy at Lowe's or Home Depot. It's made of that composite plastic or whatever, and it's got metal legs, and the metal legs fold out and snap into little plastic holders on the bottom. And so I had the table sitting there, and we'd had this table for several years, normally stored up in the attic here at the house. And so I had it sitting there, and I brought in one of these lanterns, the kind that take those big 6-volt batteries, 2 of those things you put in the bottom, and because I didn't want to run out of electricity while we were there. And so I'd set the lantern on the table there because we had other lanterns, and we went upstairs to the second floor because somebody wanted to try coaxing the kids out of the closet, the kid ghosts. So we're sitting up there and we're doing this, and then all of a sudden we hear this loud bang downstairs, and everybody's eyes get real big. What? Oh my God, what was that? Nobody's downstairs. We're all up here. And how could this be? And so we end up taking the lanterns and walking downstairs, and the table with the Ouija board on it completely collapsed onto the floor. The lantern had rolled off into a side corner. And so, of course, the other folks that were there with us, like, "Oh, you've angered the ghost now," this kind of thing. And so I took a look at the table. Well, the little plastic things that hold the legs in place, they're brittle plastic. And of course, this is November, and now it's down to 30 some degrees. And I put this heavy lantern on there, and one of them was cracked just enough that weight and that cold, it was just too brittle to expand anymore. And it just snapped, and the whole table collapsed. And so that's what caused that. Now this is the attic of the house, and they think that the axe murderer actually hid out in the attic for a while until the family came home. If I remember that right, Stu, do you remember that part of it at all?
That's the main hypothesis. Yes, is that because the the house being locked and whatnot, is that there's a very spacious room right next to the parents' bedroom, and that's and in fact I think that's the room that Linda has put up for us right now.
That's the attic, little attic space. Yes.
And you can. I remember going through there and bending the rules. I said, because they told us don't go in that attic room because there's nothing at the time. There was nothing reinforcing the floor in there, and you put your foot right through the ceiling.
Oh, I see.
And I said, yeah, they said don't go in. They didn't say anything about open the door and look around. So here we are, looking around. I'm like, yeah, you could have done that. That's certainly a possibility.
Yeah.
When you open up the whodunit angle of the Villisca killings, the only person, F.F. Jones, they did bring charges against him. The fellow who Moore had worked for previously, and they really didn't have anything going for him. That prosecution didn't go anywhere. There was a preacher in town. It's one of these mendicant guys who'd go around and stand on street corners and do his thing. And he actually confessed at one point, but it was later determined that guy was not mentally well. And so his testimony has been discounted. He would have confessed to anything. Of course, this is 1912, where they still had any number of police interrogation tactics that you wouldn't see today.
Yeah.
There's an author. Has anybody in this group ever read anything by Bill James?
No.
You know who he is? Bill James is the great pioneer of advanced study in baseball. When baseball fans are the biggest geeks of any sports fans. When you see these crazy statistics that get trotted out that you've never heard of before, Bill James pioneered the use of many, if not most, of those. Working through the 70s and 80s, and then in the year 2000, he ended up working for the Boston Red Sox. A couple of years ago, he and his daughter came out with a book called The Man from the Train. And what they've done is there is a guy that they have tracked from Germany. And it seems that everywhere he went, you would see an axe murder.
Really?
Essentially. And they've
correlated his travels to similar instances where this type of thing is happening.
Yes. If you're familiar with Hinterkaifeck in Germany, very scary story about this family was living in a kind of an isolated cabin, a little ways out of town.
Yeah. And
they knew somebody was there because they would find cups of coffee where they shouldn't be. They would hear noises. They would find newspapers that didn't belong. And they would go into town. They'd say, "There's somebody is hiding at my place. I don't know what's going on." And then they stopped coming to town. And people went out there. They saw one set of footprints leading away from that's the book. They saw one set of footprints leading away from Hinterkaifeck, and they found all the family out in the barn, out in the barn killed. So it was
wow.
And there's never been any. I don't think there's ever been any supposition as to who did it. It was something reasonably random. And the guy and the man from the train, the James hypothesis is that this is the same fellow who then came to America, and there is this real proliferation of axe murders associated with being very close to rail yards, or railroad lines. It's all over the country. It's in Colorado Springs, Iowa, New Orleans, really all over the country. So that's their hypothesis, and it is intriguing because they're just during this period you see a lot of people killed with axes, and not very many before, and not very many since.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's entirely possible that there's this fellow wandered the U.S. and Europe for number of years doing this and essentially got away with it.
Wow. That would seem to be a horrible way to go, I would think.
Oh yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. The only thing that makes me think this guy may not have been experienced is that Moore was killed with the sharp end of the axe.
Yeah.
And I think you learn really quickly. Hold it. If I try to do that, that axe is going to stick in this person's body, and it's going to be a trouble to pry it out. So you learn pretty quick. I've got to flip this thing over, and
Pummel 'em.
more luck with the blunt end. But and Bill, you can probably maybe you would speak this more, but when you go into the parents' bedroom at the Villisca house, and you just look at the architecture of the home, and I think this is something that we've really improved on in our society, because this would be a fire hazard too, obviously. But you realize if the murderer is at the top of the stairs, there is no escaping this person.
Right.
Because he is facing the parents are right there, and there's no getting away from them.
Yeah. There was no, essentially there's almost as if there's no room for the parents, because it's just, you come up the stairs to the second floor and it's just open into this space, and that was their bedroom. And then there's a little, it's almost like a 3/4 door that leads into the attic space, because you kind of have to duck down to get through. And then just down the hall from that is a door where the kids' bedroom was.
Yes. So the kids would have had to try to come through this guy to get out.
Yeah. There would have been no way.
There's no way that any kid could escape this guy. And of course, you got two little girls on the ground floor who, even if they heard this, they'd be just terrified. There's nothing they could do. They locked up for the night. There's no way they could get out unless they tried to go through the window. And the little kids often just won't even try to do that. That's
right.
I've seen that in fire situations where kids just won't think to try to break a window.
And get out.
To get out. And so there, even though there were 8 people, you're like, good heavens, how can somebody take care of 8 people with an axe, with an axe without somebody getting away? That house was a death trap. There were no getting away from this guy.
Well, I'd have to. So if this was a guy that was traveling the trains, I assume he was borrowing an axe for each murder.
Yes.
Yeah,
probably not bringing in it. Although I don't know back in the day if you could bring an axe on the train or not.
They were everywhere. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. Axes
he probably traveled in a boxcar.
Well, I am assuming some axes are better than others. He could have just had a bad axe, right?
Oh, some axes are better.
Yeah, I was thinking on the axes, and I had to remember the time frame that this happened with. That would have been more common, because I was thinking, like, who wouldn't notice a guy running around with an axe? Like, how would that not stick out? Then,
well, yeah, but if you're in a forested area, like if you were on the coast, I'm assuming those trains out there would have been full of people with axes. When just going to work, that's what you called Monday.
Yeah. In 19 teens, though. Like you said, every house had an axe.
Chopping firewood or whatever. Sure. That would have been way more common. So you just grab it on your way into the house and hack away, unfortunately. So
I know more about the axe murders in New Orleans in 1918 and 1919 that were later, and every one of those was an axe that belonged to the household, was not something that the axeman would have brought. So
so essentially, modern society and our gas-powered furnaces have eliminated a lot of the opportunity for axe murderers
to be murdered by an axe. Yes. And if you did get murdered by an axe, it'd be a lot easier to find said person.
Yes, right.
Item to have on your person.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Axes and ice picks, because back in the day you would sell block ice in these blocks before you had modern refrigeration, and so every family had an ice pick. So you have all these old stories of Murder Incorporated and so forth using axes and ice picks to kill people. I'm like, wow, these such gruesome weapons, because every family had these things.
Yeah, they were available. Right. Now, I was kind of surprised. So especially folks that live here in the Omaha area will be no doubt familiar with the Mystery Manor haunted house downtown. But there's actually a ghost story behind that as well. Are you familiar with that, Stu? Or anyone?
Well, I've read the story, but every time I try to actually run down the details, I think they made it up, Bill.
Really? Okay.
I really do.
All right.
I mean, people tend to believe it, but I mean, it's one of those, like, the Depression happened, and this one person committed suicide, another person visited the grave and committed suicide on the grave, and
yeah.
It's just
all right. All right.
I think I've never been able to find a newspaper article or anything related to that.
To back that up. So there's Linda's posted a picture up there of Mystery Manor, which is now today Halloween haunted house, right? So well, that's too bad, because that would have been great fun for the
Yeah, I know. But and then I could be wrong, but every time I try to go to the next level,
can't
Yeah,
find
and typically you'd find some kind of
Yeah.
article that kind of points to it or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
well, yeah, something like that is going to be in the papers. My goodness gracious. I
Yeah.
mean,
sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Stu, what's your next most
something for the romantics in the group.
okay.
Remember how I said that ghosts in popular imagination anyway tend to attach themselves to places that they loved in life. It's something that they latched onto. When I went on that tour of the Ghosts of Lincoln, in fact, our guide maintained, he didn't give any examples, but he maintained that the most haunted place in Lincoln was Memorial Stadium.
Huh.
Really? That place so much.
I think there are some Husker fans that would agree with you right now.
Yeah,
It makes sense.
no doubt. Yeah. Whenever I do any cemetery preservation or lectures out at Potter's Field or something, I always say, please, try to avoid telling ghost stories about this place, because that tends to bring vandalism. If you want to tell a ghost story, tell about the football stadium, because that can take care of itself. If you try to vandalize that place, you're gonna get in a world of hurt. But nobody's taking care of this place. But again, okay, back to what I was saying. There's some charming, and I will say, yes, there are some flat out charming stories of ghosts attached to Brother Sebastian's Steakhouse.
Ooh.
Okay.
Just one of my favorite places to take a lady in Omaha.
Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful. There was a fellow, and I'll spare some of the details because it gets a little bad, but he loved to go to Brother Sebastian's. Absolutely adored it. And if anybody who's ever been to Brother Sebastian's can tell you exactly why you.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love the place. Love the place. And he would go there every week. And as unfortunately as happens to a lot of people, this poor fellow contracted cancer. Wouldn't let it beat him. He just kept.
Uh-oh. Anyone?
Yeah.
Hey.
And we're back.
All right. Well, that was weird. Yeah, we just froze for a little bit there. So, all right. Well, I'll have to try to piece it together.
So, Brother Sebastian's.
So, Brother
You
Sebastian.
can just have a part A and part B.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? The ghost.
The ghost interfered with our recording.
Right.
Yes.
Ghosts, or I was actually blaming the dogs was my first intuition.
No.
They're just snoozing at my feet here, so they're innocent of this.
Winston came in, and there's so much.
Yeah. All right. So why don't you go back to that other picture you had of Brother Sebastian's? I think that's where we froze.
That's a good.
You think I still have that picture? Hang on.
Control Shift T will open up
Yeah.
Previously closed tabs.
What was the last thing that we said before we?
There we go.
Friendly ghost after the door was propped open. It was right after that.
Yeah, that's about the end of it, really. He has continued to be there, and there's some great stories like that. If you go to, the people who love places in life, they're sure as heck gonna still love them in death. There's a great story about a theater in London that I just love called the Drury Lane Theater, and that ghost will show up when they get a hit play. When you see that ghost, you've got a hit on your hands.
Huh.
And he's been known to, I guess he's been known to help out in production a little bit. People will feel like an actress will be doing something and suddenly they'll feel a hand on their arm telling them to do something like that, and the crowd will just bust out laughing.
Huh.
And they'll realize this ghost is initiating some gesture that they know will connect with the audience.
Interesting.
So yeah. It's a lot of ghosts really are motivated from love. I think that's a good way to conceive of the situation.
So have you heard any of the ghost stories around some of the places on UNL campus, like Nyhart? People that maybe have passed away there. That was one kind of traditional story that gets passed down to a lot of the college students. Like for me, it's been almost 20 years since it was last told to me, being there. And what have you heard around that?
Nyhart Hall, that's where I lived when I was a freshman. I took that, helped Jay with a couple of things doing that. There was a guy who lived in Nyhart. I think that modern economics has curtailed this somewhat, but there used to be people who we called lifers.
Okay.
There were individuals who were in college for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
I don't think you see too much of that, as much of that anymore. But yeah, Jay had, the guy who told me the story, had lived in Nyhart Hall for like 8 years. And so just more than I think is probably healthy. But Nyhart Hall at UNL is actually 4 different buildings. Raymond, Piper, Love, and not Smith. Raymer, Piper, Love, and something else that are all linked together. And what you're seeing there is actually Raymond Hall. That's the oldest dormitory extant in the state. And there's a story on 3rd floor of Raymond Hall about a young woman during a flu epidemic in the 1950s, where there were so many flu cases on campus, they ended up commandeering that floor for people suffering from flu. And she'd stay in that room, and if you've ever had the flu, it's like you're too hot, then you're too cold. So they'd say, open the window. And they'd say, oh, please shut the window. And open the window. Please shut the window. And as the story goes, she passed in that room. And going forward, on a warm day, that window would shut.
Ooh.
And if it was far too cold to open the window, that window would open. And that went on for years until they finally got sick of it and made it into a TV lounge.
Yes.
And so that's that. So if you ever want to go for a place that is surefire haunted, you could go just chill in the TV lounge on Raymond 3 in Nyhart.
Yeah, I believe that's how it was pretty much told to me when I had started there. Yep.
I wonder what would have happened if somebody would have tried to nail the window shut.
That's a good question.
Yeah, actually, that's a good question. It was kind of I was thinking about that in terms of haunted places, because almost in an eerie fashion, a couple of years ago when this whole pandemic thing started, UNL actually was designated, Nyhart and a few other places, as quarantine places to stick everybody who got sick. And I was like, wow, history is funny like that. You know?
Right.
Given what the history of that building is, and then you go back to making it a designated even certified by the Nebraska Health and Human Services or whatever as a legit place to stick quarantine people. I was like, you guys know the history here, right? Couldn't you have found anywhere else? But I guess just the way that building is made was good for it. So
well, and the other thought too, Chris, is that if you've already got one building that's haunted,
right,
add more ghosts to that versus risking haunting other buildings.
Right,
and having
let's
to
just
turn
keep
other
all the
rooms
haunted people in one place here.
Right, keep all your spooks in one basket.
Yep, just like American Horror Story. Just hey, put all the ghosts in one house and everybody's happy.
Yeah. So in thinking about that, I was like, man, that's pretty eerie. And if this thing gets any worse, it's going to be, we're going to have a refreshment of stories for people, 10, 20, 30 years from now.
Right.
If, a whole lot of people ended up dying from that or something. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And the way conspiracy theories start, they could happen anyway, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They could. A lot of these are based on a kernel of truth, right? So
Right.
you can go off and say, yeah, it was used to quarantine, people that were sick with COVID. And then that's where it goes off the rails, right?
Oh,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Well, all right, Stu. So what are some maybe little known ghost stories for the area that maybe people might not be familiar with?
Well, I'll tell you one I don't like, and that's because there's one that shows up on a lot of lists. I'm just going to say now, just don't go there because it's silly, and that's the Bellevue Public Library.
Really?
It had a reputation at one point of things happen here at night, and a good friend of mine who's worked on National Novel Writing Month with me is one of the head librarians down there. And when I was down there talking to her about it, she said, I've worked here for 20 years. There's nothing, I haven't seen anything. No one I know has seen anything. I don't know where these stories came from. And frankly, and if you look at there are some haunted buildings that, well, I don't care if there's a ghost here or not, there ought to be because this place is spooky. It's not spooky. It's the most institutional. Look at the place, for crying out loud. It's there's nothing.
Yeah.
No, just that's a place not to go. On the other hand, if you're up for a little bit of a road trip in our fair state, up by Crofton, Nebraska, right up by the huge dam by the South Dakota border, there's a wonderful little. It depends on how you want to call it. I think these days they're even classifying as a bed and breakfast because it's small enough. But I would call it a hotel, the Argo Hotel in downtown Crofton. And it's one of the remnants of these hotels that sprang up when there was a lot of cattle and so forth moving through there. People would stay when they were in town for business and so forth. And it's a nice place to visit as a tourist attraction. That place has its share of ghosts. And last time I was there, yes, that's the place. Okay, now the Bellevue Library, that doesn't look haunted. That place looks haunted.
Yep.
Yeah, if you're going to see a ghost, that's by gum, that's where it's going to be. And the particular story is, I wish I was a bit better prepared. There's a French actress, or no, an actress who did some work in France rather, who stayed there and had some attachment to the place that they attribute at least one of the ghosts to. At one time, when they were doing some renovation, they found a bag of bones in one of the walls as well. I've heard the bones turned out to not be human, but I can't confirm that. So, but between the actress and the bones, and they found a portrait in the basement with some very unusual qualities. I'm not sure how it's constructed. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Does that place look haunted or does that place look haunted?
It does. Exactly. It looks like it's got the exact look for a haunted place.
It looks like a place I want to go stay.
I would not want to be running around there at night.
Oh, I do.
I'm right there at night with a bullseye lantern. Perhaps not a candle because I'm a little phobic, but it's with some sort of retro lighting. But yeah, they have a portrait that has some unusual qualities to it. You have to look at it from this angle and the other, or some sort of process that was done to it. And in one of these suites, they have a suite called the French Suite that features a picture of this beautiful actress who had a connection with the place back in the 19-teens and 20s, who is pictured in the All Together without a stitch of clothing on. And that suite also features a bidet, which I have some anxiety about myself. That's but yeah, that place is wonderful, and they got some good steak up there. That is it's got a great restaurant. I'll endorse the Argo Hotel in Crofton just by its own virtues as a place to stay, but it's got some ghost stories, and the staff that I talked to is sincerely split about whether or not they have some paranormal stuff going on there. Yeah, I mean it's difficult to critique objectively, but like I said, if there were such a thing as ghosts, then by gum, that's a good place for them. Right there. That's it's a charming place, and so it's a wonderful trip as well. There's a lot of things to see up there.
Now, Stu, you've done a lot of research on ghosts, have you ever experienced what you would call a ghost?
Let's see, the closest thing to it, I think, was probably when the tour bus pulled up my old house and said, "Hey, your old house is on." That'd be up to it. Well, no, and truth be told, if you really want to get technical, I was just thinking about this the other day, because this just happened the other day. I am a notorious procrastinator. Just horrible. I'm 51 years old, and I still do things that you would attribute to like a 19-year-old undergraduate. Because I do research, and I still present papers at conferences, and I was giving last time I was on the podcast, I was talking about the paper I was presenting on Mario Bava. And as again, in the tradition of a college student, I pulled an all-nighter finishing the paper on Mario Bava. That was an all-nighter, a night in advance. I actually got some sleep, before I actually gave the paper. But as I was driving, I went out to grab something to eat real quick at like about 6 in the morning, before the sun came up. And as I'm driving, suddenly I see what looks very much like a young man in baggy jeans and sneakers in front, walking right in front of me. I'm like, holy smoke! I hit the brakes, and then as I and drove a little slower, so I just did not to hit someone, and realized there was no one there.
That's creepy.
Now logically, these sort of things happen when you pull all-nighters. Your brain makes connections that weren't there. And I remember just from the way the light was hitting, I was only seeing just the sneakers and the jeans. I'm sure it was just my brain putting together stimuli that that looked like somebody walking. And I'm always phobic about that too, because this was a place where people do tend to be randomly walking through at 5 a.m.
Right. Mm-hmm. It's that whole pareidolia thing, right? Where the mind takes stimulus and tries to make sense of it and make an image out of it. If you look at stare at a staticky TV screen long enough, you might see a face in there, or you look at a distant image of Mars or something and you see a face on the laying on the landscape, right? Because your mind is trying to take that random stimulus and make something familiar out of it. And we're mostly familiar with other humans, so that's what we try to our brain tries to make sense of it in that respect.
Exactly. Yeah, especially if you're expecting to see someone, or in my case, is you're afraid of seeing somebody. You're always, that's like the worst fear you always have is, oh my goodness, somebody walking in front of me and I ran him over. I didn't even see him. Wasn't even looking at him.
Sure.
I shouldn't have been on the road. I was, had overnight. It's been over 24 hours since I slept. Yada yada. So that's I've had experiences like that. Where I'll see something out of the corner of my eye, and if I were more open-minded toward that sort of thing, I might be more inclined to think that's something else. Now, before we get going, speaking again of the tourism we have in the state and the sites you might go to, I'll hardly endorse the Argo in Crofton, because the food is wonderful, and it's absolutely all the atmosphere in the world. And yes, Linda, if you want to tempt fate and go for the ghost, that's a great place for it. Go for it, 100%. And I'll endorse Brother Sebastian till the cows come home.
Right. All right. Well, I'll extend the same question then to Chris and then Charles. So, Chris, have you ever experienced anything you would consider to be a ghost?
I have not, and that could be because I make effort, subconsciously or not, to just avoid going to places where I'd probably come across a ghost.
Wow.
Okay. All right. So you're not big into haunted houses.
I've gone for the entertainment factor, but not to some of the more legitimate ones.
Okay. Right. All right. Well, Charles?
Just piggyback on what Chris said before Charles responds, that really is part of the appeal of the Villisca House too, though. I mean, if you say the heck with the ghost, because when I went the second time, I said, the ghost thing doesn't really appeal to me. And the one running it was the widow of the fellow who showed me the first time, and she said, oh, well, if you're in the history, we've got plenty of the history over here. And she showed me the books, and she said, but I've learned that unfortunately the ghosts are what sells.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. I'd be more inclined on the history aspect of it. Yep.
Mhm.
All right, Charles.
No, I grew up in an older house, or what would be wooden floors,
Yeah.
and the heating system was the what it was, pumped water, right?
Mm.
Yep.
Steam.
So at night,
Radiators. Yeah.
so with radiators, yeah. So at night there'd
Knocking
be
noises.
footsteps coming up and down the stairs, and they'd run around, and the hallway was circular. So they would go around in a circle and go back down the stairs, and it would happen every 20 minutes or something.
And it'd just be the expansion contraction of the wood floor.
Yeah, but it was just so I just kind of grew up with that. That's
as a normal thing.
And actually, my parents got a deal in the house because the prior owners thought it was haunted.
Oh, wow.
And so
that always helps.
Well, and it was by the wood. Well, so I have kind of a different sensibility to certain, like even where I'm living now, if the backyard's sort of rural, right?
Yeah.
And when I've had friends spend the night, it'll freak them out. But to me, it feels that's just how it is. It's normal. It's I don't mind being in the woods. I don't mind the old wooden floors and the creaking.
Yeah. But
Character.
on the same notion, though, you don't keep an axe on hand.
Well, I was wondering about that. I do not believe I own an axe. The house I grew up in, I'm sure had like I said, it's different. There's in Washington State, so we had all sorts of machetes and axes, and
yeah. We did at my folks' house. I know they had machetes, sickles, axes, pretty much every implement of destruction you can think of. And I remember a number of arguments with my siblings over those implements. One that almost cut my hand off one time.
Yikes.
Not an argument you want to get into when you're on the wrong end of a sickle.
Well, see, and my parents have a portrait of me. There was one of those, it's a Sears dealie or something, but it's a portrait where they did, I think they brushed some whatever sealer over to make it look like a painting a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And so I guess it's been a long time. But when the light hits it right, my eyes will look in a different direction. Just because, but if you look close, I remember looking close as a kid, and it's it's because there's basically brush strokes of a clear varathane there. So there's actually a haunted photo of me someplace.
I thought you were going to say the photo aged now, and you don't.
Yeah. I will see. That could be. That could be everything. Yeah, my Dorian Gray right there. Yeah, if only. Well, the problem is that'd be nice if I didn't age too.
Right.
But if it turns out we're both aging, that's just what's
kind of pointless at that point. All right. Well, Stu, I think we're coming up on an hour here. Anything you want to wrap us up with? Any good takeaway story? This particular podcast later shortly before Halloween there. So
yes, well, it not as spooky perhaps, but the other thing you want to check out in Nebraska, and it's sort of, I'm still trying to kind of wrap my head around this, but I hope I have not mentioned this on previous podcasts, but there is a museum in Hastings, Nebraska that I came upon quite accidentally dedicated to Bigfoot.
Really?
Yes. And they have chronicled various and sundry Bigfoot sightings in Nebraska. Exactly where the hell Bigfoot is supposed to hide in Nebraska. I mean, we have portions of the state where you can watch your dog run away for 3 days, and your scary biped is supposed to be able to
hide out.
Escape, but apparently that's the case. They have any number of artifacts. They have, you're used to seeing Bigfoot footprints. These folks took the opposite route. They have Bigfoot handprints. I'm not joking. I swear to God, I wish I was joking. That's the place. It's this lady's house, and they've built onto it, and it's like half of it's her house, half of it's the Bigfoot Museum, and they have a little outside where it's also part of the Bigfoot Museum, and they're pretty serious about it. They've reconstructed this little Bigfoot cave that someone founded with little Bigfoot belongings in it, which was various detritus, and the
Little Bigfoot almost sounds like a movie title.
Well, speaking of movie titles, the darndest thing, the major takeaway that I got from the Bigfoot Museum was that Bigfoot has a habit of braiding the tails of horses that are allowed to run in Bigfoot land. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, my inescapable conclusion is that Bigfoot is a brony.
A brony.
Yes.
Wasn't there some sort of creature in Children of the Corn? It's been too long for me. What?
I've never seen the film.
Oh. Well, none of you see. Okay. Well,
so we need to check it out, is what you're saying?
I'm saying that's if you're going to be talking about, I don't know about ghosts, but horror type of things.
Hiding in the corn.
In Nebraska.
Yeah.
Children of the Corn is one of the must-sees. Yes.
Yeah, you're obviously right about that. Yeah.
And it seems to me like there was a demon creature, but it's been 20-something years, so never mind. But I was just wondering, because to me, Bigfoot's got to be a cover for something else. That's because that is so silly. And you know, I'm from Washington State originally, so Bigfoot out here is just
Bigfoot's everywhere.
Appalling. It's appalling that they'd even try that. And even worse if the governor out here would have a Bigfoot day. But oh yes, which they did. You're right, Charles. Yes, they did. Just Bigfoot anything to be annoying.
Wow.
And so to try to latch onto that's just so silly that I have to think it's got to be, there might be something real to it, but it's got to be covering up for something else.
I think it's just
like if you're looking for Bigfoot out here, you should expect some Area 51 kind of shit or something.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
People had some weird hobbies. Somebody snapped a picture of a Bigfoot walking on the interstate, well, like by Brady, Nebraska, or something like that. I'm inclined to think that picture is actually real, and there maybe was some idiot out walking around in an outfit on the interstate in Brady, Nebraska. I hope when I see these things,
maybe one of those crazy ghillie suits or whatever they call them.
Exactly like that.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I really think, that you're just asking for it. You want to get hit by a car.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. But we have enough Comic Cons and stuff here in Omaha, and so you'd expect something eventually.
Out in Elkhorn, just a few miles from Omaha here, the Air Force had a high frequency antenna array system that they would use to communicate with planes all around the world. And you drive by it and you just see these arrays of gigantic, block spanning antennas, strung out. And a guy I worked with and I, one year for Halloween, our office, we always had these Halloween contests every year, competitions for each different department. So one year we decided to do all aliens. And so we'd ordered these masks with these big alien eyes and these big robes, and hands, and we had the whole outfit there. And I told Keith was the guy's name, and I said, you know what, Keith, we ought to get these and walk down that road next to those giant antenna arrays. That's got to get some coverage. And Keith goes, yeah, or some bullets.
It is Air Force property.
Yeah, right. Well, we wouldn't have actually crossed onto the property, but just walking down, because I think it was a gravel road that led up to the entrance to the place. So, walking down that in an alien outfit, and some farmer drives by in his pickup with a shotgun or a rifle handy, you might have been picking some buckshot out of your costume.
Has anyone heard about the story about the ninja who attacked the Green Berets out west?
What?
Oh, yes. That's just recently in the news, wasn't it?
Yeah, just a few days ago. Somebody, I don't know if they were Green Berets, but they were like special ops folks who were doing some airborne training out in one of the western states. And what was that, Nevada? Something like that.
Yeah, I saw the headline and I looked at the headline and you've got to be kidding me. And I didn't take time to read the whole story.
California, apparently, U.S. Special Operations soldiers attacked by ninja in California.
It was California. Okay. Yeah, this guy went out for a smoke, and this ninja comes up to him and said, "You know where my family is?" And here's this poor sergeant standing there like, "I don't know where your family is." And
oh my God,
the guy is swinging his katana and he's trying to run. He's running away from this ninja. He's bailing over this fence. He's not armed. I mean, that's what people don't. A lot of people don't realize about people in the armed forces. Unless you're actually doing something that's going to require you to shoot, you as a rule are not armed. You don't
right.
Mm-hmm. So he bails over this fence. I think the report was he ended up injuring 2 people, this sergeant, some captain someplace, and finally, like as one sensibly would do, they called the cops on him, and the cops ran him down. They tased him. That didn't work. No, that's right. They said a projectile. It must have been a beanbag at him. That didn't do anything. And so they finally tased him and brought him down. They've identified him. It's this 35-year-old guy named Carlos. What's the name, Chris? Do you see the?
I'm still going through it. Yeah, this is a pretty interesting. It's all bizarre.
Yeah. If you think ghost stories are weird, just read the regular news.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What the?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I don't really need ghost stories that much. I mean, you can find, I mean, it's the idea that someone really thinks there are numerous big feet in Nebraska.
Dino Rivera, 35 years old.
Yeah, the idea that someone thinks that is actually weirder than big feet existing in Nebraska.
Right.
Boy, did they give him the book of charges. Homicide, assault with a deadly weapon, brandishing a weapon with the intent to resist or prevent an arrest, along with vandalism and obstructing or delaying a peace officer in the performance of their duties. I mean, they threw the book at this guy.
Nice.
those are probably just the state charges. When the feds get over this guy was attacking our army folks. He's gonna be
not good.
Not in a good place.
No. Well,
crazy.
He should be put somewhere where he can get the help he needs and people can be safe from him.
Right.
So, well, listen, Stu, it's been a great conversation as always. Thanks for your insight into a lot of these stories. And we always appreciate you having you on the show. And we'll definitely have to have you back on again soon. So we can talk. I'm sure there's plenty more stories out there that we could spend some few hours on. All right. Well, cool. Well, thank you all. And thank you all for tuning in for another episode of Galactic Driftwood Podcast. Be sure to check us out, galacticdriftwood.space. We're available on YouTube and also on your favorite podcasting service. And check out our partner podcasters on synergynation.net as well. And with that, we'll bid you all adieu. Thanks again, Stu. See you all
later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Galactic Driftwood Podcast. For more information and past episodes, please visit our website at galacticdriftwood.space or subscribe to us on YouTube. And now, please deactivate your cranial downlinks, collect your towels, and be sure to watch your step as you exit our gravity well.